Chapter 1396. With Lu Ming's cultivation, even flying would be much slower, let alone tearing through space. Yuan Lu is indeed extraordinary. Lu Ming sighed. Lu Ming, you're wrong. This isn't Yuan Lu. Long Yuanshan smiled. Beside him, the dragon guards smiled as well. Lu Ming's reaction was within their expectations. What? This isn't Yuan Lu. Lu Ming's pupils constricted as he said in shock. Yes. Long Yuanshan waved his hand and the picture in the air disappeared. He said, this is just a small island near Yuan Lu. In your eyes, this is a continent. If we're really in Yuan Lu, the pressure from the outside world would be stronger than this. Everything in the world would be more stable than this. What? Lu Ming's heart trembled. This wasn't Yuan Lu. It was just an island near Yuan Lu. They were just near Yuan Lu, but everything in the world was already so stable. If the pressure from the outside world was already so strong, how terrifying would the real Yuan Lu be? However, Lu Ming immediately thought of something. The cultivation environment here was already dozens of times better than the continent of God. How good would the cultivation environment in Yuan Lu be? The pressure from the outside world was just a small matter. After some time, one would get used to it. The cultivation environment was the most important as it could allow one's cultivation to break through continuously. Lu Ming's eyes were filled with even more anticipation. Lu Ming, this is a transit station for outsiders to get used to it. Otherwise, I'm afraid you won't be able to handle it if you enter Yuan Lu all of a sudden. Long Yuanshan explained with a smile. Lu Ming nodded to express his understanding. Let's go. Let's move forward. There should be others here. We'll be staying here for half a month. Long Yuanshan said and moved forward. After crossing a large mountain, some lofts appeared in front of them. Lu Ming realized that there were also some young people living here. These young people's cultivation was very strong. There were 8th-level spirit gods, 9th-level spirit gods, and even perfected spirit gods. Lu Ming saw that the strongest one was at the supreme level. He learned from Long Yuanshan that these youths were the disciples that the Dragon God Valley had recruited from various continents. Like Lu Ming, they had stayed in their original continents due to some matters. They were only heading to the Dragon God Valley now. Therefore, there were not many of them, only about 100 of them. Lu Ming was assigned a room. The next half a month was mainly to adapt to the environment here. This was because the environment of the continent of God was too different from the Yuan continent. In the courtyard of the pavilion, Lu Ming brandished a set of fist techniques, his figure leaping up and down. He let his body slowly adapt to the environment here. At the same time, he also let the circulation speed and frequency of the true essence in his meridians adapt to this place. A few hours later, Lu Ming stopped and felt comfortable all over. His body had also adapted slightly. In the beginning, when Lu Ming moved, he would either use a little more strength or a little less strength. Now, it was much better. The Yuan Qi here is really rich, and the will of heaven and earth is so clear, Lu Ming sensed carefully. The will of heaven and earth here was dozens of times clearer than in the continent of God. In other words, it was many times easier for a martial artist to comprehend the will of heaven and earth here than in the continent of God. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed. Lu Ming and more than 100 youths stepped into the teleportation array and headed to the Yuan continent. It felt as if they were in the void tunnel again. After some time, that feeling disappeared and they reappeared on a huge altar. This is a snow mountain. Lu Ming looked around and realized that this was a snow mountain. Little guys, welcome to the Yuan continent's Dragon God Valley. Long Yuanshan's deep voice sounded. He stepped out of the altar and said, you better be prepared when you come out. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. He understood what Long Yuanshan meant. The laws of heaven and earth in the Yuan continent were perfect, so the pressure of heaven and earth might be even greater. On the altar, because of the protection of the array, he could not feel it. Let's go. Yuan continent, I'm finally here. These youths were extremely excited and flew out of the altar one after another. However, when these youths flew out of the altar, their bodies trembled. Some of the weakest among them almost could not stabilize their bodies. What a strong pressure! Lu Ming also flew out of the altar and immediately felt a terrifying pressure acting on his body. The weight of his body was also extremely shocking. The pressure here was probably hundreds or even thousands of times greater than in the continent of God. Lu Ming was shocked. Also, it's so cold. Lu Ming felt a chill run through his body. This was a snow mountain, so the temperature was shockingly low. With Lu Ming's cultivation, he could not feel the cold of ordinary snow and ice. However, the temperature here made him feel a chill run through his body. The origin chi of heaven and earth. Lu Ming took a deep breath. Immediately, the origin chi of heaven and earth surged towards him. It was unimaginably rich. Lu Ming felt that if he casually breathed in, the amount of origin chi would be equivalent to the amount of a low-grade origin stone. The origin chi of heaven and earth was rich while the spiritual chi of heaven and earth was extremely thin. Whoosh! In the distance, a burly old man in a short-sleeved shirt with bare arms flew over and landed in front of Lu Ming and the rest. Long Yuanshan and the rest greeted the old man. Lu Ming, I'll leave first. This is Deacon Long Yuanshan. He will arrange your accommodations. Long Yuanshan said to Lu Ming. Lu Ming nodded. Then, Long Yuanshan and the others who went to the other continents like him left one after another. Alright, follow me. I'll take you to your accommodations. Long Yuanshan said and flew forward. Everyone quickly followed. However, they had just arrived and the pressure of the outside world was too strong. For a while, they could not adapt to it. This was after half a month of adapting at the transit station. Otherwise, it would be even more difficult. After flying down the snow mountain, their field of vision widened. In front of them, an incomparably huge glacier canyon appeared in front of them. This glacier canyon was formed by the separation of two mountain ranges. In the sky, heavy snow swirled, and the world was covered in white. Lu Ming looked into the distance and found that in front of the huge glacier canyon, there were also snow mountains. However, they were far away and could not be seen clearly in the vast snow. Dragon Chi, so much Dragon Chi, so strong. Lu Ming felt that the Nine Dragons' bloodline was a little hot. Through the Nine Dragons' bloodline, he was shocked. Through the Nine Dragons' bloodline, he seemed to be able to see countless Dragon Chi in the glacier canyon and the snow mountain further away. In the huge canyon, there was a lot of Dragon Chi that was still weak. However, behind the canyon, in the vast snow mountain, there was some Dragon Chi that was earth-shattering. In front of it, Lu Ming was like an ant. Boom! A terrifying pressure pressed down on Lu Ming. Lu Ming's expression changed drastically. He could not help but take a few steps back and quickly withdrew his senses. So strong. That aura is far beyond an emperor. Is that the aura of a saint? Lu Ming's heart was in a perilous situation. Chapter 1397. The burly old man, Long Yuanshan, glanced at Lu Ming and said, "There are many experts in the valley. You'd better not use your bloodline to sense them. Otherwise, you'll only be asking for trouble." Lu Ming smiled bitterly. Some of the others were in awe. Obviously, Lu Ming was not the only one who had sensed the aura of the snowy mountain in front of them through their bloodline. The disciples recruited by the Dragon God Valley were all geniuses who had awakened the bloodline of the true dragon. It was easy for them to sense each other. The group continued flying forward. It's so cold. After flying into the huge glacier canyon, the temperature dropped even lower. Moreover, the temperature kept dropping as they went further in. While flying, Lu Ming sized up the surroundings. The glacier canyon was huge. The glacier walls on both sides were tens of thousands of feet tall. On the glacier walls, one could see houses and palaces carved out of ice. However, most of them were cave dwellings that had been carved out of the walls of the glacier. Moreover, there were some side valleys on both sides of the canyon. It was like a main vein with some branches extending out. Some people lived in these branch valleys. After flying for more than 10 minutes, the burly old man led them into a valley. There were many caves carved out on both sides of the valley. At a glance, there were at least a few thousand caves. Many of the caves were already occupied. As if sensing the arrival of people, some people walked out of the caves. They were all very young, the same generation as Lu Ming and the others. What a strong cultivation! Lu Ming's pupils shrank when he sensed the cultivation of these people. Supreme Being, these young men were all Supreme Being. However, Lu Ming immediately felt relieved. The cultivation environment here was too good. It was many times better than the continent of God. Even a pig could cultivate to the martial king realm or even the spiritual god realm here, not to mention those peerless geniuses. Alright, you can stay here for the time being. The people here are like you, newly selected disciples from the other continents. However, they came 2 years earlier than you. Also, this glacial valley is only the outer valley. You are not official disciples of the Divine Dragon Valley yet. You can only be considered as reserve disciples. You can only be considered as official disciples of the Divine Dragon Valley after passing the test. There are still 4 months until the trial. You should cultivate diligently during this period of time. With your talents, it won't be difficult for you to reach the Martial Highness realm in 4 months. Most of those who came here 2 years ago have already reached the Martial Highness realm. Let me tell you, this assessment is a great opportunity. Others can only be envious. The higher your cultivation, the greater your chances of obtaining the opportunity. Therefore, you must seize this opportunity and work hard. The burly old man explained in detail. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. Right now, they weren't official disciples. They were just reserve disciples. They needed to pass the test before they could be considered official disciples. The standards of the Yuanlu great sects for recruiting disciples were really harsh. At this moment, the burly old man waved his hand and a jade token appeared in his hand. The token had a lifelike ice dragon carved on it. The burly old man waved his hand and the jade tokens flew to Lu Ming and the others. Lu Ming grabbed one of the tokens. There's a number on this token, which represents the number of the ice cave you're staying in. Check in according to the number. Also, this token is the identity token of your reserve disciple. Alright, you guys get used to it and cultivate well. I'll come back after a while to explain the details of the assessment to you guys. After saying this, the burly old man left the place. Everyone looked for the corresponding ice cave according to the number on the jade token. Nice to meet you, brother. Just as Lu Ming was about to look for his cave residence, a clear voice was heard. Lu Ming looked sideways and saw a lady looking at him with a smile. The lady was wearing a white dress. She had a sweet smile and fair skin. She was a rare beauty. Behind the lady was a young man in a white shirt and holding a folding fan. Lu Ming was a little surprised. He did not know these two people. They should be the disciples who came here 2 years ago and had just walked out of the ice cave. If he did not know them, why did they greet him? Hello. Lu Ming replied politely. The young lady blinked and looked at Lu Ming carefully. She seemed to be very curious. Lu Ming touched his nose and was a little speechless. Lu Ming was not narcissistic enough to think that a beauty would take a fancy to him as soon as he arrived. Little sister, what are you doing? Behind the lady, the man holding a folding fan was also very curious. Your bloodline is very special. The lady suddenly said. Lu Ming was stunned again. Brother, please don't misunderstand. I am Qiu Yingying and this is my elder brother, Qiu Hao. How should I address you? The lady smiled. Lu Ming. Lu Ming replied. Brother Lu, my bloodline is quite special. I have been sensing your bloodline just now and feel that your bloodline has been suppressing mine, so I am very curious and want to befriend you. Qiu Yingying said. I see. Lu Ming guessed that what she had sensed was most likely his 9 dragons bloodline. Buzz! At that moment, the shadow of a true dragon appeared behind Qiu Yingying and disappeared in a flash, but Lu Ming still saw it clearly. Qiu Yingying's true dragon bloodline was not a 5-clawed true dragon, but a 6-clawed one. It was actually a 6-clawed true dragon. According to legend, the true dragons all had 5 claws, and the 9 dragons were a variant of the true dragons. Only then would they have 9 claws. However, Lu Ming did not expect there to be a 6-clawed true dragon in the world. Perhaps it was also a variant of the true dragon. Lu Ming guessed. Brother Lu, my bloodline is quite special. It is a variant of the true dragon and has 6 claws. It is more powerful than ordinary true dragons, so I am very curious. What is your bloodline? Can it suppress me? Qiu Yingying blinked and looked at Lu Ming carefully. She was very curious. My bloodline? Lu Ming whispered. As he spoke, the 9 dragons' bloodline appeared behind him and he immediately put it away. Qiu Yingying and Qiu Hao's eyes widened. 9 dragons? Your bloodline is the legendary 9 dragons? No wonder you can suppress me. Qiu Yingying exclaimed in surprise. Lu Ming smiled. There was no need to hide the 9 dragons' bloodline. Once they fought, others would know immediately. Brother Lu, it's your first time here. Have a good rest. My brother and I came here 2 years ago. We will show you around in a few days. Qiu Yingying said with a smile. All right, then I'll thank you in advance. Lu Ming cupped his fists and then found his ice cave and walked in. There was an ice door at the entrance of the ice cave. It was activated by a jade talisman and automatically closed. The ice cave was very big and wide. It was 100 meters in length and width and at least 10 meters in height. There were ice tables, ice chairs, and even ice beds inside. Chapter 1398. Lu Ming walked to the wall and clawed at the ice wall. Crack! Only a few claw marks appeared on the ice wall and they were not deep. It's so hard. Everything in the Yuan continent is much harder than the transit station. Compared to the Godly Ruins continent, it is incomparable. Lu Ming sighed inwardly. After that, Lu Ming began to practice martial arts to adapt to the external pressure. After practicing for a few hours, Lu Ming stopped and felt comfortable all over. Then, Lu Ming sat down cross-legged and began to cultivate. Once the true dragon fighting art was activated, the rich origin qi between heaven and earth frantically gathered toward Lu Ming at an astonishing speed. What rich origin qi? Lu Ming discovered that absorbing the primordial qi of heaven and earth here was comparable to swallowing low-grade primordial stones. This was too shocking. When one cultivated here, one did not even need low-grade origin stones. The surging origin qi was constantly being swallowed and refined, turning into true origin. At the same time, Lu Ming's mind entered a state of emptiness. He began to comprehend heaven and earth and nurtured the embryonic form of the chaotic domain. In this place, Lu Ming realized that not only had the essence of heaven and earth become clearer, but the great Tao of heaven and earth, which was even more profound than the essence of heaven and earth, was also clearer. This was almost impossible to sense in the Godly Ruins continent. Lu Ming was overjoyed. Comprehending the great Tao of heaven and earth would allow the sovereign's domain to improve faster. It was no wonder that the sovereigns in the Godly Ruins continent cultivated very slowly. Especially in the Godly Wilderness continent, most of the sovereigns were stuck at level 1 Martial Royal Realm. Those who could reach level 2 Martial Royal Realm were the top experts. There were very few of them. It was no wonder that the sovereigns in the Godly Ruins continent racked their brains to enter the Yuan continent and cultivate there. This was because the cultivation environment was too different. The difference was too great. After those sovereigns came to the Yuan continent, their cultivation would probably improve by leaps and bounds. In the blink of an eye, half a day had passed. Lu Ming finally ended his cultivation. It feels so good to be able to cultivate here. Lu Ming's face was full of amazement. He realized that cultivating here for half a day was equivalent to cultivating in the godly wilderness continent for a month. His embryonic form of the chaotic domain had matured again. It was getting closer to full maturity. Wow, Lu Ming, you're in Yuanlu. Ha, you've finally left that poor and remote place. A Dandan's voice sounded in Lu Ming. It was Dandan. It had climbed onto Lu Ming's shoulder and was sucking in the air with its mouth. Large amounts of origin energy were sucked into Dandan's mouth. Dandan, you're awake. Lu Ming was delighted. Dandan had been unconscious for almost a month since the last battle. 4. Dandan glanced at Lu Ming, then said with a sad face, Lu Ming, you've suffered heavy losses this time. Although you've woken up, you're far from recovered. Take out all your spiritual herbs. Having said that, she stared at Lu Ming with sparkling eyes. Alright, let's enter the mountain river diagram. Lu Ming said and entered the mountain river diagram with Dandan. In a valley, Bubble was still curled up and sleeping soundly. There was a transparent bubble at the tip of his nose that was fluctuating in size. Lu Ming's heart ached. It seemed that the little guy had suffered heavy losses in the last battle. Lu Ming waved his hand and the valley was immediately filled with spiritual herbs. All kinds of spiritual herbs of various grades were piled up in the valley. In that battle, hundreds of sovereigns were killed. The spiritual herbs in those storage rings were terrifying. Lu Ming took them all out for Dandan and Bubble to eat to their heart's content. Ha ha ha, Lu Ming, you're very generous this time. Dandan's eyes lit up and immediately rushed into the pile of spiritual herbs. He grabbed a handful of spiritual herbs and stuffed them into his mouth. Chirp chirp, seeming to have sensed the aura of the spirit herbs, Bubbles woke up. It glanced at Lu Ming in a daze and then at the pile of spirit herbs in a daze. Afterward, its gem-like eyes emitted bright rays of light and it pounced into the pile of spirit herbs, gulping them down in big mouthfuls. However, there were so many spiritual herbs here. The two guys ate as much as they wanted, but soon, their stomachs bulged. They lay there and burped, their mouths full of medicinal fragrance. The mountain river diagram has its own space, but the environment seems to be the same as the divine wilderness continent. I should absorb some origin chi to improve the environment here. Lu Ming thought. In the mountain river diagram, there were mountains, rivers, flowers, and trees. Later on, Lu Ming captured many demonic beasts and planted many spiritual herbs in the mountain ridge. However, the environment here was similar to the divine wilderness continent. Whether it was the spiritual herbs or the demonic beasts, their growth was slow. If the environment was the same as the divine wilderness continent, the spiritual herbs in the mountain river diagram would grow faster. With a thought, Lu Ming came out of the mountain river diagram and reappeared in the ice cave. Then, the mountain river diagram appeared in Lu Ming's hand. He opened the mountain river diagram and whispered, "Absorb." Whoosh whoosh. Suddenly, the mountain river diagram released a powerful suction force and absorbed the origin chi between heaven and earth. The origin chi between heaven and earth formed a funnel-like shape and crazily gathered toward the mountain river diagram. At this moment, the people in the valley were alarmed. The geniuses who were cultivating were awakened. What's going on? Why is the origin chi of heaven and earth gathering in one direction? Who's cultivating? That's impossible. Even a ruler wouldn't cause such a huge commotion when he cultivates. Who is it? Voices were heard. Some people walked out of the ice cave and sensed carefully. Although they knew which ice cave it was, they did not know who it was. However, this effect was only limited to the Branch Valley. After all, the origin chi here was too rich, and the Branch Valley was very vast. This is the Enlightenment Ancient Tree. Lu Ming's eyes suddenly lit up. Originally, the mountain river diagram's absorption of the origin chi between heaven and earth would not cause such a big commotion. It was mainly because of the Enlightenment Ancient Tree. The Enlightenment Ancient Tree had 3 crisp leaves on it. Its branches were very thin, even smaller than a pinky finger. In the divine wilderness continent, the Enlightenment Ancient Tree grew too slowly. Now, the Enlightenment ancient tree was glowing and shining. A mysterious aura lingered on it as it kept absorbing the origin chi from the outside world. At the same time, Lu Ming sensed that the Enlightenment ancient tree seemed to be resonating with the great path between heaven and earth. Wisps of great path aura were emitted from the Enlightenment ancient tree. In just a moment, Lu Ming felt that the branches of the Enlightenment ancient tree had grown a little thicker, and its leaves had become greener. The fourth leaf. All of a sudden, Lu Ming's eyes widened. He noticed that the fourth leaf had also grown. It seems that the Enlightenment ancient tree has a chance to fully grow in the Yuan continent. It's considered good that it can survive in the divine wilderness continent. Lu Ming thought to himself. He was overjoyed. If the Enlightenment ancient tree fully grew, it would be of great help to him. Lu Ming took out a lot of spiritual liquid and watered the roots of the Enlightenment ancient tree. It seems that I have to get more spiritual herbs in the future to let the Enlightenment ancient tree grow as soon as possible. Chapter 1399. Just like that, the mountain river diagram and the Enlightenment ancient tree frantically absorbed origin chi for 3 days and 3 nights before calming down. The mountain river diagram was already filled with rich origin chi. Lu Ming put away the mountain river diagram. The following days were very peaceful. Lu Ming cultivated and practiced martial arts every day to adapt to the environment. Half a month later, Lu Ming had completely adapted to the environment of Yuanlu. At that moment, Lu Ming opened the door of the ice cave and went out to take a breather. "Brother Lu." A delicate voice called out. Lu Ming looked in the direction of the voice and saw the siblings, Qiu Yingying and Qiu Hao. "Miss Qiu, Brother Qiu, what a coincidence." Lu Ming smiled. "Brother Lu, how have you adapted during this period?" Qiu Hao waved his folding fan and said with a smile. To be honest, Qiu Hao was very handsome. He wore a long robe and waved his folding fan like an elegant young master. "I've completely adapted," Lu Ming said with a smile. "That's great. We're going to the market. Brother Lu, do you want to come with us?" Qiu Yingying said. "Market? Sure." Lu Ming agreed immediately. He was also very curious. The environment of Yuanlu was so good that it would definitely produce countless treasures. The divine wilderness continent could not compare to it. Lu Ming also wanted to see it. If there were suitable ones, Lu Ming also wanted to buy some. The three of them walked out of the branch valley together. Then, they walked along the huge glacier canyon and walked into the depths of the canyon. This canyon was only the outer valley. The people who lived here were basically reserved disciples and some servants. The real Dragon God Valley was inside the canyon, which was a vast snowy mountain. The market was deep in the canyon. Many official disciples of the Dragon God Valley would come and go there. Only then would there be good things. Soon, Lu Ming and the others arrived at the market. The market covered a very large area. There were stalls on both sides of the street. The layout was similar to that of the divine wilderness continent. People came and went in the market. So many powerhouses. Lu Ming spread out his spiritual sense and scanned it slightly. His heart trembled. 5 out of 10 people walking on the street were emperors. Some of them were very young, looking like they were in their 20s. The most shocking thing was that Lu Ming saw a few 12 or 13-year-old teenagers. They still had a childish look on their faces, but they were actually emperors. Lu Ming was dumbfounded. Seeing Lu Ming's expression, Qiu Yingying smiled and said, "Brother Lu, we were too shocked when we first arrived. But it's also because the cultivation environment of Yuanlu is. Indeed." Lu Ming let out a long breath. Martial emperors were absolute overlords in the divine wasteland continent. They ruled over a region and ruled over a region. However, in the Yuan continent and the divine Dragon Valley, they were everywhere. Because emperors were nothing in Yuanlu. If one did not have a backer, it would be very dangerous to cultivate in the outside world. If one was not careful, one might die. In Dragon God Valley, rank 1 to rank 3 martial emperors are worthless. They have no status and are like servants. Rank 4 martial emperors and above have some status. Rank 7 martial emperors and above are the backbone of Dragon God Valley. Some of them can be assigned to some positions. Qiu Yingying explained in a low voice. She then added, of course, young geniuses are not included. Lu Ming nodded. He knew that young geniuses had different statuses wherever they went. Because young geniuses had unlimited possibilities. This is life elixir. Moreover, it's of the highest quality. Suddenly, Lu Ming saw the life elixir in a stall. The highest quality life elixir. Lu Ming had seen the life elixir in the Divine Wilderness continent. However, Lu Ming had never heard of the highest quality life elixir. It was almost extinct in the Divine Wilderness continent and even the continent of Godly Ruins. The highest quality life elixir was very useful for emperors as it could heal their injuries. Yuan Lu was indeed worthy of its name. He saw such a precious spiritual elixir as soon as he arrived. Lu Ming's second body was severely injured. The highest quality life elixir was very important to the second body. Lu Ming had to get it. Senior, how much is this bottle of life elixir? Lu Ming cupped his fists at the stall owner and asked. The stall owner was an old man with white hair. The old man raised a finger and said, 100,000 origin stones, 100,000 origin stones? Lu Ming was stunned. It was not because it was too expensive, but because it was too cheap. A bottle of the highest quality life elixir was only a legendary treasure in the continent of Godly Ruins. How could it be sold for only 100,000 origin stones? Lu Ming was in disbelief. He asked again, Senior, it's only 100,000 origin stones? Of course, not one less, not one more. The old man said. All right, I'll buy it then. Lu Ming took out a storage ring with 100,000 primordial stones inside. The old man took it and scanned it with his spiritual consciousness. His expression changed, and he threw the storage ring back to Lu Ming. Junior, are you playing with me? Lu Ming was confused. Senior, please don't blame him. Brother Lu just came from another continent, so there are some rules that he doesn't quite understand. Qiu Yingying quickly tried to smooth things over. Oh? So you're a new reserve disciple from another continent. The old man's expression softened. Brother Lu, the origin stones that this senior is talking about are middle-quality origin stones. Qiu Yingying quickly transmitted her voice to Lu Ming. They're middle-quality origin stones? Yes, the origin stones that are commonly used in Yuanlu are middle-quality origin stones. Generally speaking, middle-quality origin stones are referred to. Low-quality origin stones are almost useless in Yuanlu. They're considered trash only under special circumstances. Qiu Yingying explained. I see. Lu Ming smiled. The cultivation environment in Yuanlu was too good. Cultivating casually was equivalent to cultivating with low-quality origin stones. Therefore, low-quality origin stones were basically useless. Only middle-quality origin stones were mainstream. A middle-quality origin stone was equivalent to 10,000 low-quality origin stones. 100,000 middle-quality origin stones were equivalent to 1 billion low-quality origin stones. The price was reasonable. However, there was a problem. Lu Ming did not have any middle-quality origin stones. He had killed so many emperors, and his storage rings were filled with low-quality origin stones. There were at least tens of billions of them. However, after arriving in Yuanlu, low-quality origin stones were completely useless. What a waste! Lu Ming wailed in his heart. His heart ached. So many origin stones were useless in Yuanlu. They had become trash. Now, Lu Ming had become a pauper. He had no money. Lu Ming's face turned green. Qiu Yingying and Qiu Hao smiled bitterly when they saw Lu Ming's expression. They were the same when they first arrived. Little guy, haha, the low-quality origin stones on you are useless, right? Do you have any treasures on you? You can use them to exchange. Chapter 1400. Treasure. Lu Ming pondered. He had given all the spiritual herbs he had to Dandan and Bubbles. However, even if he took them out, they would not be worth much. Lu Ming would not take out anything that was too valuable, such as the lightning cauldron and the air-frozen pearl. Only an emperor's spiritual weapon would be left. Senior, how many medium primordial stones would an emperor's spiritual weapon be worth? Lu Ming took out a large saber and asked. Lu Ming had killed many emperors in the godly ruins continent and had obtained nearly 20 emperor's spiritual weapons. An emperor's spiritual weapon is not bad. It is worth 1,000,000 primordial stones. The old man's eyes lit up. 1,000,000 primordial stones? Lu Ming's eyes also lit up. The value of an emperor's spiritual weapon had greatly exceeded his expectations. It was even more valuable than he had imagined. Brother Lu, an emperor's spiritual weapon can only be fully unleashed by those above the 7th martial royal realm. Only saints can refine it. Although there are many of them in the Yuan continent, there are too many high-level martial royal realm cultivators in the Yuan continent. The demand is too great. Therefore, the value of an emperor's spiritual weapon has always been very high. Qiu Yingying explained to Lu Ming. Lu Ming suddenly understood. Indeed, there were many emperor's spiritual weapons in the Yuan continent. However, there were even more high-level martial royal realm cultivators. Basically, the supply could not meet the demand. Therefore, the value was naturally high. For example, in the small continents outside the Yuan continent, such as the godly wilderness continent, emperor's spiritual weapons were usually left behind by saints or high-level martial royal realm cultivators when they went to those places. It was basically impossible for anyone to refine them. Most of them were passed down from the Yuan continent. For example, Lu Ming had obtained the emperor's spiritual tower in the Saint Mansion's secret realm. It was also brought over from the Yuan continent by the heavenly profound saint. The emperor's spiritual weapons in the godly ruins continent were usually obtained this way. They had only accumulated a few after countless years. Little brother, do you want to sell this emperor's spiritual weapon? If you want to sell it, I will buy it. The old man said. I want to sell it. Senior, I have another one. Following that, Lu Ming took out an emperor-rank spirit weapon that looked like an iron rod. The elder and Qiu Yingying were surprised. They didn't expect Lu Ming to have so many emperor-grade spiritual weapons. Alright, I'll buy it. Here are 1.9 million origin stones and this bottle of top-grade life water. The old man handed Lu Ming a storage ring and a bottle of life water. Lu Ming took it and scanned it with his spiritual sense. He found a pile of raw stones lying in the storage ring. Every single one of them was filled with concentrated origin energy. Compared to low-tier origin stones, it was many times purer and denser. This was a middle-grade origin stone. Cultivating with a middle-grade origin stone was naturally many times faster than cultivating with a low-grade origin stone. After putting it away, Lu Ming continued to wander around with Qiu Yingying and Qiu Hao. On the way, Lu Ming discovered that there were too many natural treasures here. All kinds of spiritual herbs were level 9. Level 8 spiritual herbs were rarely seen. There were also all kinds of refining materials and spiritual liquids, all of which were of a very high level. Along the way, Lu Ming bought a lot of spiritual herbs. Soon, the 1.9 million middle-grade origin stones were almost used up. Lu Ming's heart ached. Those were 2 emperor-grade spiritual weapons. However, the spiritual liquids and spiritual herbs he bought were very useful. The spiritual liquids could promote the growth of the tree of enlightenment, while the spiritual herbs could speed up the recovery of Dandan and Bubbles. After coming to Yuanlu, he realized that he had become a pauper. Although he still had a lot of emperor-grade spiritual weapons, they would be used up soon if he continued to use them like this. During this time, Qiu Yingying and Qiu Hao also bought some things. Get lost. I'm interested in this turquoise blue fruit. Suddenly, a loud roar was heard. Nonsense, what do you mean you're interested in it? I said I'm interested in it. Get lost if you don't have money. Another voice was heard. Who do you think you are to tell me to get lost? Let's fight in the arena if you dare. The voice from before was heard. Let's fight then. The voice from behind was heard. Then, they saw a group of people flying in a certain direction. Emperor-grade spiritual weapons are about to fight. Brother Lu, let's go to the arena and see what's going on. Qiu Yingying said. Alright, I'd like to see it too. Lu Ming was curious. The three of them followed the crowd to the arena. If the disciples of the Dragon God Valley had any conflicts, they would usually settle it on the sparring platform. Boom! Boom! As soon as Lu Ming and the others arrived, they heard a violent explosion. On a huge arena, two figures were constantly colliding with each other. The two burly men in their 30s were constantly punching each other with their fists. Violent explosions were heard between heaven and earth. Third-level martial royal realm, but their combat strength is very strong. Lu Ming's eyes widened. He realized that the cultivation of the two men was at the early stage of the third-level martial royal realm, but their combat strength was beyond Lu Ming's imagination. He felt that the LV4 martial royal realm experts on the continent of godly ruins were no match for the two men. The combat strength of the two men had completely surpassed the combat strength of the LV4 martial royal realm experts on the continent of godly ruins. Lu Ming was shocked. Brother Lu, do you feel that the two men's combat strength is very strong? Qiu Yingying said. Indeed, they're much stronger than the emperors on the continent I'm from. Lu Ming nodded. Yes, we were also very surprised when we first arrived, but this is the combat strength of an ordinary emperor from Yuanlu. Qiu Yingying explained, in Yuanlu, both the martial path and the inscription path have been developed to the extreme. It's much stronger than the other continents. All kinds of martial techniques, bloodlines, intent realms, and spiritual bodies have been developed to the extreme. Therefore, the cultivators here are very strong, far stronger than those on the other continents. For example, the emperors, unless they're low-ranking servants, usually those with a little status have cultivated realm martial techniques and their combat strength is very shocking. Yuanlu, it's indeed Yuanlu. Lu Ming couldn't help but clench his fists together. The cultivation civilization of the Yuan continent had already developed to the extreme. It was far from what the godly ruins continent could compare to. It could be said that a decent cultivator in the Yuan continent would be a genius that could challenge those with a higher cultivation level than him. Lu Ming thought of the people that Di Xian had brought with him. Those people's combat strength was not very strong. Maybe, the status of those people was akin to servants in the Di clan, which was why their combat prowess wasn't particularly high. Lu Ming's thoughts were in a whirl, and he felt a great pressure. Here, there were too many powerhouses. Rulers were all over the streets, and only saints were high and mighty powerhouses. Moreover, the emperors here had extraordinary combat strength. In the continent of godly ruins, Lu Ming could fight with a peak LV3 martial royal realm expert without using the chaotic flipping sky seal and without the help of his second body. However, if Lu Ming did not cast the chaotic flipping sky seal and did not have the help of his second body, he might only be able to fight with an early-stage second-level martial emperor martial artist. Chapter 1401. The gap was too big. In the continent of God, Lu Ming could injure a fourth-level martial emperor when he used the chaotic sky seal. In this place, Lu Ming was no match for the two burly men in the early stage of the third-level martial emperor, let alone the fourth-level martial emperor. Moreover, they were ordinary martial emperors. What if he met a genius? How strong would he be? It seems that I was a frog in a well when I was trapped in this corner of the continent of God. Lu Ming clenched his fists. While feeling the strong pressure, Lu Ming was full of anticipation. His blood was boiling with excitement. Yuan continent was the real big stage. It was colorful and it was far from what the continent of God could compare to. On the fighting ring, the two exchanged hundreds of moves. In the end, both of them were injured and left the place. However, after the two left, 2 more people went up to fight. After that, Lu Ming watched 5 battles, all of which were between emperors. As expected, most of the emperors here were much stronger than the emperors in the continent of God. Lu Ming more or less had an idea. After that, Lu Ming, Zhou Yingying, and the others returned to their residence. After returning to his residence, Lu Ming first poured the life water on his second body. As expected, his second body glowed and its recovery speed greatly increased. Then, Lu Ming continued to cultivate. In Yuanlu, the cultivation level below the martial emperor was too low. Only by breaking through to the emperor realm as soon as possible could he gain a foothold. In the blink of an eye, Lu Ming had been in Dragon God Valley for a month. During this period, Lu Ming would occasionally go out and buy some books to read. They were all about Yuanlu. As he had just arrived, he naturally had to understand the world he was in. On this day, there were suddenly sounds of drums outside. It was the sound of drums. Someone was summoning them. Lu Ming ended his cultivation and walked out of the cave. He saw Long Yuanchuan standing in the valley. Whoosh! 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 Youths flew out from the various ice caves and stood in the valley. There were more than 1,000 of them. Lu Ming discovered that some of the youths who had come with him were progressing very quickly. Some of them were originally at the 8th level of the Spirit God realm, but now they had broken through and reached the 9th level of the Spirit God realm, or even the Great Circle of the Spirit God realm. These people were the top geniuses of the Master Teacher continent, and there was no way they would be lacking in terms of talent. As such, they were able to advance their cultivation by leaps and bounds. Alright, you newcomers have already been here for a month. You should have gotten used to it. Now, there are still 3 months before your assessment. Now, I will explain in detail your assessment mission in 3 months. In 3 months, your assessment mission will be to explore a secret realm. Long Yuanchuan said. Explore a secret realm? Lu Ming and the others were all stunned. That's right. Only by walking out of the dungeon alive can one be considered to have passed the test and become an official disciple of the Divine Dragon Valley. Long Yuanchuan said. Many people's faces changed. It seemed that the secret realm was quite dangerous. Long Yuanchuan seemed to have seen through everyone's thoughts. He smiled and said, although this secret realm is dangerous, let me tell you, it is also a great opportunity. I don't know how many martial emperors and even sages want to enter, but they can't. Because this secret realm is a great emperor's secret realm. When he said the last sentence, Long Yuanchuan deliberately emphasized his voice. What? Great emperor's secret realm? Great emperor? Everyone, including Lu Ming, was stunned. They could not help but widen their eyes. Great emperor's secret realm? Could it be a secret realm left behind by a great emperor? A great emperor was a top expert in the primordial realm, an existence that dominated the world and ruled the sky. What kind of treasures would there be in a secret realm left behind by such a person? Everyone's eyes were burning with excitement. Even sages were out of their reach, let alone great emperors who were above sages. This is the first time that this great emperor's secret realm has been discovered. After investigation, only people below martial emperors can enter. Those above martial emperors are not allowed to enter. Even sages are not allowed to enter. Therefore, you must make good use of this time and raise your cultivation to the martial emperor level. According to the sages, martial emperors and above are not allowed to enter the great emperor's secret realm. However, it is not a problem for you to break through after entering. Therefore, if some martial emperors enter the great emperor's secret realm to break through to the martial emperor level, they will be able to seize the opportunity and obtain the treasures. Also, this time, all the top forces in the Tsang state will send people in. This is the danger. Therefore, in the next 3 months, try to raise your strength as much as possible. You must grasp the opportunity yourself. Long Yuanchuan continued to explain. I see. After hearing this, Lu Ming finally had some answers to some of the doubts in his heart. Lu Ming finally knew why the Divine Dragon Valley, Heavenly Deity sect and other sects would travel a great distance to the Divine Ruins continent to select disciples. It turned out that it was all because of the Great Emperor's secret realm. They recruited geniuses from various continents to enter the Great Emperor's secret realm. The Yuanlu was divided into many large states. The Tsang state was a large state in the south of the Yuanlu. The Divine Dragon Valley was a powerful force in the Tsang state. There were countless large and small forces in the Tsang state. However, there were a total of 13 top forces that stood at the peak of the Tsang state. These 13 forces were the overlords of the Tsang state. The Divine Dragon Valley was one of the 13 forces. In addition, the Heavenly Deity sect, Heavenly Universe Demon sect, Nine Heaven Sword sect and even the Heavenly King Hall that had caused chaos in the Divine Wilderness continent because of a Heavenly King token were also one of the 13 major forces. This time, these major forces would send people into the Great Emperor's secret realm. Therefore, these major forces would send people to the small continents overseas to recruit disciples. The D clan is not in the Tsang state. I wonder where they are. Lu Ming thought to himself. The Yuanlu was too vast and the Tsang state was only a small part of it. The books that Lu Ming had bought mostly introduced the Tsang state. Lu Ming was not too sure about the places outside the Tsang state. After the announcement, Long Yuanchuan left the place. However, these youths could not calm down. After that, they returned to their cave residences and cultivated in seclusion. It was obvious that they could break through to the monarch realm after entering the Great Emperor's secret realm. Therefore, if they raised their cultivation to the limit of the Supreme Being realm and broke through to the Emperor realm after entering the Great Emperor's secret realm, they would have an absolute advantage. Lu Ming began to place more of his attention on the embryonic form of the chaotic domain. Now, the embryonic form of the chaotic domain was getting closer and closer to its limit. As long as the embryonic form of the chaotic domain was cultivated to its limit, he would be able to break through to the Emperor realm. In the blink of an eye, another 3 days passed. Dong! 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 On this day, there was an intense rumble outside. It was the sound of a drum being struck. It was the sound of the drum being summoned again. However, wasn't there a gathering 3 days ago to announce the Great Emperor's secret realm? Why was there a gathering now? With doubts, Lu Ming walked out of the cave residence. Outside the cave residence, 3 youths stood proudly. Chapter 1402. When the crowd gathered in the valley, they looked at the 3 young men in surprise. Just now, these 3 young men had sounded the drum. Why did the 3 of them sound the drum and gather the crowd? Everyone is here, right? One of the young men swept his gaze across the crowd and said plainly. No one made a sound. All right, I believe all of you have heard the news a few days ago. In 3 months, we will be entering the Great Emperor's mystic realm. The young man continued speaking with a smirk. Let me tell you, this is the good fortune that you have accumulated over several lifetimes. If it wasn't for this reason, all of you would never be able to join the Dragon God Valley, much less enter the Great Emperor's mystic realm. Therefore, you have to seize this opportunity. Do you understand? The young man's voice reverberated throughout the valley. However, everyone could hear the strong disdain in his voice. It was like a prince looking down on a group of beggars. Many people frowned but did not make a sound. From their tone, these people should be locals. They weren't from a continent outside the Yuan continent like them. Since they were from the Yuan continent, no one knew if they were related to the upper echelons of the Dragon God Valley. Therefore, no one refuted the young man. All right, let's get down to business. The person in front of you is the peerless genius of the Dragon God Valley, young Master Yin Feng. Aren't you going to greet him? The young man continued speaking as he pointed at the young man in the middle. Among the 3 young men, the one in the middle was the leader. He looked to be in his early 20s. He wore a silver robe and his face was cold and arrogant. He looked at Lu Ming and the rest with disdain. Greetings, young Master Yin Feng. A few people cupped their fists. What kind of attitude is this? Let me tell you, young Master Yin Feng will be entering the Great Emperor's mystic realm as well. Now, I will give you a chance to submit to young Master Yin Feng and become his subordinates. After entering the Great Emperor's mystic realm, you will be under young Master Yin Feng's command. In the future, young Master Yin Feng will take care of you when you are in the Dragon God Valley. The young man's words finally exposed their true intentions. They wanted Lu Ming and the rest to submit to young Master Yin Feng and become his subordinates. Lu Ming sneered. The Great Emperor Mystic Realm was filled with opportunities. Naturally, outsiders like them wouldn't be the only ones to enter. The local elites of the Yuanlu's great sects would definitely enter as well. Yin Feng and the other two seemed to have a cultivation of the martial highness realm. They would definitely enter the trial too. They had a good idea. Now that they had recruited Lu Ming and the others, when they entered the Great Emperor Mystic Realm, they could make use of them to gain benefits for themselves. This was something that the crowd present could easily figure out with just a little thought. I'm sorry, but I'm used to being alone. I have no intention of becoming someone's subordinate. Goodbye. A bald young man said coldly, before heading back to his cave. Whoosh! With a flicker, the young man who had spoken earlier appeared before the bald young man. Are you going to refuse? The native youth said coldly. I don't have the habit of being other people's dog. The bald youth sneered, implying that the other party was merely a dog of Yin Feng. You're courting death. The native youth's face turned gloomy and cold murderous intent was emitted. A lowly ant from a desolate island. It's already your fortune to be able to join the Divine Dragon Valley. You don't know how to be grateful and you dare to be arrogant in front of me, Yin Fei Zhang. It seems that if I don't teach you a lesson, you will forget who you are. The native youth was called Yin Fei Zhang and he emitted a powerful aura. Do you think I'm afraid of you? The bald young man also emitted his aura, which was also at the martial highness realm. These youths were all peak existences in their respective continents. They were invincible among their peers and they looked down on others. All of them were proud and arrogant. How could they be willing to become someone's subordinate? Similarly, Yin Fei Zhang's cultivation was also at the martial highness realm. Why would he be afraid of someone of the same level? Hee, then I'll let you know how weak you desolate island trash are. Attack, I'll give you 3 moves. Yin Fei Zhang said coldly. Why do I need you to give me a handicap? I'll defeat you in 10 moves. The bald young man shouted. He was also a proud person. Wang! A yellow halo emitted from the bald young man's body. It was the embryonic form of his domain. The embryonic form of his domain shrouded Yin Fei Zhang. Insignificant skill. Since you're overestimating yourself, I'll fulfill your wish. Yin Fei Zhang took a step forward and the embryonic form of his domain also emitted from his body. The 2 embryonic forms of their domains met in the air. But an unexpected scene occurred. The moment the 2 embryonic forms of their domains met, the bald young man's embryonic form of his domain instantly collapsed. The bald young man's face changed and he took a few steps back. Shwa! At this moment, Yin Fei Zhang moved. In an instant, he appeared in front of the bald young man and sent a palm strike towards him. The bald young man's face turned grave. He exhaled and sent out a palm strike. Bam! When the 2 palms met, the bald young man's face changed. His body was pushed back and he spat out a mouthful of blood. How could this be? The bald young man looked at Yin Fei Zhang in disbelief. They were both at the martial highness realm, but he couldn't even withstand 1 move and was defeated. How was this possible? His self-confidence had suffered a severe blow. Many of the other youths were shocked. It wasn't that the bald young man wasn't strong, but Yin Fei Zhang was too strong. Domain martial technique. Lu Ming said a few words. He possessed part of 9 dragons' memories and his knowledge was extraordinary. He could tell at a glance that Yin Fei Zhang had used a domain martial technique. A domain martial technique could unleash the full power of a domain. Furthermore, a domain martial technique was very precious. Even in the major sects of Yuanlu, not everyone could cultivate it. Intent realm martial techniques existed in some small continents. But it was impossible for those small continents to have domain martial techniques. Just now, Yin Fei Zhang had used a domain martial technique to defeat the bald young man. Now do you know how much of a trash you are? Do you really think you're an elite? Let me tell you, the reason why Dragon God Valley gathered you here is not because of how strong you are, but because your cultivation is too weak. In the Divine Dragon Valley, there are many geniuses who are already martial monarchs. They cannot enter the Great Emperor's mystic realm. There are too few people below martial monarchs. That is why they came to your remote villages to gather you here. Yin Fei Zhang said coldly. Many people were shocked. Dragon God Valley had recruited them as disciples not because of how strong they were or how talented they were, but because Dragon God Valley didn't have that many geniuses with weak cultivation. This was a great insult to the top geniuses of the various continents. Especially the bald young man. His face was ashen. If any of you don't agree, I don't mind crippling him or throwing him out. Anyway, you aren't the only disciples recruited from overseas. It won't hurt to cripple a few of you. Chapter 1403. Everyone's expression made Silver Flying Zhang's cold expression even more arrogant. He scanned the crowd and spoke again. If there's anyone else among you that would like to have a taste of my strength, feel free to step forward. I'll let you know how useless you are. Everyone looked at each other and no one stepped out. Silver Flying Zhang was too strong and no one had the confidence to win. Let me learn from you. A moment later, a young man in a yellow robe stepped forward. Good, good. You have guts. Then I will teach you a lesson. Silver Flying Zhang looked at the youth in the yellow robe and a sharp cold light flashed. The crowd retreated and made a large space. Silver Flying Zhang and the youth in the yellow robe stood opposite each other. Roar! The youth in the yellow robe didn't hide his strength. A dragon roar resounded throughout the valley and a yellow dragon appeared above his head. 9 golden chakras shone. This was the youth's bloodline. The youth in the yellow robe directly used bloodline fusion. Wang! Then, a mountain peak appeared above the yellow dragon's head and emitted a strong pressure. An emperor rank spiritual weapon. Hee, so it's an emperor rank spiritual weapon. Do you think it's useful just because you have an emperor rank spiritual weapon? How naive. Silver Flying Zhang sneered. Swish! Then, his figure flashed and emitted a green radiance as he pounced towards the yellow dragon. Roar! The yellow dragon let out a dragon roar and its dragon claws stepped on the air as it pounced towards Silver Flying Zhang. At the same time, the mountain peak enlarged rapidly and suppressed Silver Flying Zhang. Swish! 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 Yin Fei Zhang's figure flickered. His figures suddenly multiplied into 18. Each figure waved their hand, and a green chain flew towards the yellow dragon. The 18 chains were extremely fast. In an instant, they wrapped around the yellow dragon's body, binding it tightly. Roar! The yellow dragon struggled with all its might and roared continuously. However, the green chain was indestructible and couldn't break free. Suppress! The yellow dragon roared and used the mountain-shaped emperor rank spiritual weapon to suppress Silver Flying Zhang. Sky Wind Divine Technique. Silver Flying Zhang sneered as his green domain spread out and turned into a huge palm print that blasted towards the mountain peak. Dong! A thunderous explosion rang out. The cyan palm imprint was destroyed, but the mountain peak was also sent flying back. The emperor-ranked spirit weapon was sent flying by Silver Flying Zhang's bare hands. What a powerful domain martial technique! Lu Ming, who was in the crowd, could clearly see that the Silver Flying Octopus had been using a domain martial technique since the beginning. It was a type of domain martial technique that had a myriad of transformations. It brought out the power of the Silver Flying Octopus's wind domain to the extreme. It was extremely mysterious and its power was shocking. When the yellow-robed youth used bloodline fusion and combined it with the Emperor's spirit weapon, his battle prowess was definitely strong. In the continent of godly ruins, the yellow-robed young man would be able to defeat a martial emperor. He might even be slightly stronger than a first-layer martial emperor. However, he was still no match for Silver Flying Zhang, which showed how strong Silver Flying Zhang was. Then, Silver Flying Zhang's body flashed and appeared on top of the dragon's head. He slammed his palm down on the dragon's head. Roar! The earthen yellow true dragon let out a wail before exploding, revealing the yellow-robed young man's body. Silver Flying Zhang stepped on the yellow-robed young man's face, causing the yellow-robed young man to crash into the ground, creating a large crater. Humph, you want to go against me with such weak battle prowess? You're courting death. Silver Flying Zhang snorted coldly as he exerted force on the yellow-robed young man's face. The yellow-robed young man screamed miserably as he spat out large mouthfuls of blood. Many people were indignant. On the side, Yin Feng and another young man looked on coldly as if they were looking at Silver Flying Zhang stepping on a chick. Is there anyone else who wants to fight with me? Come out. Silver Flying Zhang said loudly. No one said anything. Humph, since no one said anything, I'll take it that you've agreed to side with young Master Yin Feng. Alright, let's sign the blood oath contract now. A scroll appeared in Silver Flying Zhang's hand. When he opened it, it was filled with inscriptions. What? You want us to sign the blood oath contract? No, we can't sign the blood oath contract. If we sign the blood oath contract, we'll really become your slaves and be controlled by you. Instantly, the scene was in an uproar as many people shouted. The blood oath contract was unique to Yuan continent. Once it was signed, it was equivalent to swearing a blood oath and it couldn't be violated. In that case, wouldn't they have to be controlled by Yin Feng for the rest of their lives? How could these proud and ambitious sky prides who came from different continents accept this? What's with the noise? Let me tell you, you have to sign it today even if you don't want to. Moreover, this blood oath contract isn't for life. It's only limited to the exploration phase of the secret territory. Do you understand? Silver Flying Zhang spoke, but the crowd was still angry and no one would sign it. What a bunch of idiots. Silver Flying Zhang started to lose his patience as he berated, do you think you're sky prides? Let me tell you, in Yuan continent, you're nothing. You're just a bunch of trash. If you don't side with young Master Yin Feng, I guarantee that you won't have a good life in the future. Yuan continent is filled with danger and ferocious beasts. I guarantee that you won't even know how you died. If young Master Yin Feng protects you, you'll have a good cultivation environment. This was a blatant threat. However, these words were indeed powerful and made many young men hesitate. That's right. Yuan continent was filled with experts. While there were opportunities, the danger level was also extremely high. They couldn't stay in Dragon God Valley and cultivate for the rest of their lives. They needed to go out and train. If Yin Feng did something to them, they would be in danger. Moreover, in a large sect like Dragon God Valley, it was indeed better to have a backer than to cultivate alone. Some young men started to be tempted. Alright, I'll sign it. Me too. Finally, someone spoke and agreed to sign the blood oath contract. A smile appeared on Silver Flying Zhang's face as he said, that's more like it. Come up and sign it. More than 10 young men walked up and signed their names on the blood oath contract with their own blood. The young man in the yellow robe at Silver Flying Zhang's feet also signed the contract obediently. What about you guys? Silver Flying Zhang held the blood oath contract and walked to the front of the young women. He looked at them coldly. The young women's expressions changed. In the end, they clenched their teeth and signed the contract. You guys? Then, Silver Flying Zhang held the contract and looked at the others. People had to lower their heads when they were under someone else's roof. Those few people also clenched their teeth and signed the contract. Soon, about 50 people signed the blood oath contract. We won't sign it. All of a sudden, a deep voice sounded. Everyone looked over and saw that the one who spoke was an honest young man. Beside him, there were two people who looked exactly the same as this young man. Chapter 1404. You're not signing? The smile on Silver Flying Zhang's face disappeared and was replaced by a stern expression. Yes, we're not signing. We, the three Yuan brothers, will not be manipulated by anyone. One of the triplets said. He. Silver Flying Zhang laughed coldly and said, "It seems that if I don't cripple a few of you today, you will think that I won't be ruthless." After saying this, a green radiance emitted from Silver Flying Zhang's body and a cold killing intent was emitted. The triplets gathered together and looked at the Silver Flying badge cautiously. Shwa! Silver Flying Zhang immediately attacked. A green palm print flew towards the dantian of one of the triplets. Boom! The triplets shouted at the same time. Their auras were connected and merged seamlessly. Their auras also increased rapidly. One of the triplets punched out and clashed with Silver Flying Zhang's palm. With an explosion, Silver Flying Zhang's body trembled and flew backwards. The triplets also took a few steps back. Not bad. Silver Flying Zhang's face turned cold. He did not expect that the triplets could combine their auras and resist his domain martial technique. Kill! Silver Flying Zhang shouted and attacked the triplets again. However, the triplets stood together and their auras merged. They exchanged a few blows with Silver Flying Zhang, but the result was the same. They were evenly matched. Silver Flying Zhang could not defeat the triplets. Many people's eyes lit up. Although the local geniuses of the Yuan continent were powerful and had cultivated domain martial techniques, there were too many continents in the Yuan continent. However, there were too many continents outside the Yuan continent. There would always be some unimaginable prodigies who could fight against the native prodigies. As long as they could resist the local geniuses, they would not need to sign the blood oath contract. After exchanging more than 10 blows, Silver Flying Zhang was still unable to defeat the triplets. His face turned cold. Shwa! A silver hook appeared in Silver Flying Zhang's hand. The silver hook was covered with barbs and looked extremely dangerous. Emperor-level spiritual weapon. Silver Flying Zhang finally used his Emperor-level spiritual weapon. The triplets' faces changed slightly. A shield appeared in their hands at the same time. Three shields that were exactly the same. Furthermore, they were all spirit weapons at the Emperor level. Shwa! Whoosh! The silver hook in Silver Flying Zhang's hand swept towards the triplets, but one of them blocked in front of him with a shield. Clang! The silver hook swept across the shield, but the shield didn't move an inch. Clang! Clang! The silver hook in Silver Flying Zhang's hand swept out like lightning, instantly sweeping out hundreds of ripples. Even the space had a slight ripple. One should know that this was the Yuan continent, where the space was extremely stable. It was extremely difficult to break open the space. The fact that a ripple appeared in the space showed how terrifying the power was. However, as the silver hooks continued to sweep the shields, the triplets remained as steady as Mount Tai, unable to move them at all. In the end, Silver Flying Octopus used bloodline fusion but was still unable to break through the defense of the triplets. These three brothers are interesting. Lu Ming smiled. Done. At this moment, a cold voice rang out, causing Silver Flying Zhang's heart to tremble. He retracted his bloodline and turned back into his human form with an ugly expression. The one who spoke was Yin Feng. What a piece of trash. You can't even take care of a few ants from a barbaric island. Yin Feng placed his hands behind his back and took a step forward, berating coldly. Silver Flying Zhang's expression changed drastically as he glared at the triplets. He lowered his head and retreated to the side, not even daring to let out a fart. Are you going to surrender and sign the blood oath contract obediently, or do you want me to do it personally? Yin Feng looked at the triplets. The three of us will not sign the contract. We will not be manipulated by others. At most, we will die. one of the triplets said while the other two nodded their heads. Since you want to die, I shall grant your wish. Yin Feng's expression turned cold. His body emitted a layer of silver radiance as his muscles bulged slightly. At the same time, a layer of silver territory spread out. Boom! Yin Feng suddenly attacked. His fist glowed with silver radiance as he threw a punch towards the triplets. In the air, there was a dull explosion. Block it! One of the triplets shouted. Dong! Yin Feng's silver fist landed on the shield, causing it to vibrate violently. The triplets had a drastic change in expression as they retreated continuously. The three of them retreated over a dozen steps before they could stabilize themselves. So strong. The crowd looked at Yin Feng in shock and disbelief. The strength that Silver Flying Octopus had displayed was already strong enough. Ordinary geniuses of the same level could not even take a single blow from him. However, the triplets were able to withstand Silver Flying Octopus's attack. But now, the triplets were forced to retreat over a dozen steps by Yin Feng's punch. This is a spiritual body. An innate spiritual body. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. Yin Feng's physical body was actually a spiritual body. Yin Feng had not broken through to the Emperor realm and was only a martial saint. Therefore, his spiritual body could only be an innate spiritual body. Lu Ming thought of Di Xian from the Di clan. He also had an innate spiritual body and his combat strength was shocking. Moreover, once an innate spiritual body reached the martial Emperor realm, it could transform and become stronger and more shocking. No wonder Yin Feng was so arrogant. It turned out that he had an innate spiritual body. Not bad. You are able to take a punch from me without being defeated. You should be proud of yourself for having such an achievement. However, I only used half of my strength just now. Let's see how many punches you can take. Yin Feng said coldly as he threw out another punch. Take it. One of the triplets roared, and a true dragon appeared above their heads. The three of them fused their bloodlines, and their shields grew larger and larger until they completely covered the true dragons. Dong! Yin Feng's punch landed on the shields once again. The shields vibrated violently and a terrifying sound wave was emitted. Some people's faces changed and they almost vomited blood. Bang! Bang! The triplets were forced to retreat. Their dragon claws stepped on the ground and created huge holes in the ice. If this had happened in the continent of God, the ground within a radius of 10,000 miles would have been blown apart. The true dragons formed by the triplets trembled and almost exploded. Yin Feng's face turned cold when he failed to take down the triplets with 2 punches. He felt that his dignity was being challenged. It's my turn. He roared as a pair of silver gloves appeared on his hands. There was no doubt that the silver gloves were an emperor's spiritual weapon. Yin Feng threw out another punch while wearing the emperor's spiritual weapon. This time, the triplets could not take it anymore. Their shields were sent flying and their bloodlines scattered. They reverted to their true forms and were sent flying. They crashed into the walls of the valley and vomited mouthfuls of blood. You should be proud of yourself for being able to take 3 punches from me. I'll give you a chance and let you sign last. Yin Feng said indifferently with his hands behind his back. He then looked at Yin Fei Zhang and scolded, "Why aren't you signing?" Yes, yes. Chapter 1405. That person had no choice but to sign it. Then, a few more people signed the blood oath contract. Silver Flying Zhang took the blood oath contract and came before Qiu Yingying and Qiu Haoshan. He shouted, "Sign it." "I won't sign it." Qiu Yingying bit her lips and said. "What?" Silver Flying Zhang's face turned cold. Yin Feng's face also turned cold as killing intent flashed in his eyes. He had personally shown his strength and there was still someone who refused to sign it. They were completely ignoring him. "Do you know the consequences if you don't sign it?" Silver Flying Zhang said coldly. "The great emperor's mystic realm must be filled with danger. You want us to sign the contract so that we will be at your disposal in the great emperor's mystic realm. At that time, we will be your pawns. You want us to go first and reap the benefits? Qiu Yingying said loudly. Her words made many people's faces change. It was true. If Yin Feng and the others were to go first when they encountered danger in the great emperor's mystic realm, they would be in deep trouble. They might not even be able to keep their lives, let alone the opportunity. Some of the people who had signed the contract turned pale. What did you say? You're courting death. Silver Flying Zhang roared. They had originally planned to find some scapegoats to work for them in the great emperor's mystic realm. They did not expect Qiu Yingying to expose them. Although you are strong, we have so many people here. If we work together, why would we be afraid of you? Also, the seniors of the Divine Dragon Valley have crossed a great distance to summon us. Now that we have yet to enter the great emperor's mystic realm, I don't believe that you can do anything to us. Qiu Yingying said loudly. Qiu Yingying's words made Yin Feng, Silver Flying Zhang and the others' faces turn ugly. Bitch, don't think that I won't dare to touch you. You're just an ant. Even if I kill you, what can I do? Silver Flying Zhang shouted angrily as he threw a palm at Qiu Yingying. Qiu Yingying's face changed and she quickly retreated. But Silver Flying Zhang's speed was extremely fast. He was like a bolt of green lightning as he flew towards Qiu Yingying. Little sister! Qiu Hao exclaimed. He wanted to help her, but it was too late. Suddenly, a figure appeared in front of Qiu Yingying and threw a punch. Bang! This figure's fist collided with Silver Flying Zhang's palm, causing Silver Flying Zhang to retreat a few steps. Lu Ming! Brother Lu! Qiu Yingying and Qiu Hao both exclaimed. The figure that suddenly appeared in front of Qiu Yingying was naturally Lu Ming. Previously, Lu Ming had not made a move. Because there was no need for that. He didn't know anyone else at the scene, so why should he make a move? But now that Qiu Yingying was involved, Lu Ming had no choice but to intervene. Brat, you dare to attack me? Silver Flying Zhang stared coldly at Lu Ming. You dare? Who do you think you are? Why wouldn't I dare? Ridiculous. Lu Ming smiled. Hearing this, Silver Flying Zhang's expression froze. Then, he revealed a ferocious killing intent and shouted, Die! The silver hook reappeared in his hand and swept towards Lu Ming. He decided to kill Lu Ming as an example to others. Scram! 9 dragon forces erupted as he activated the suppressing Hell Heaven skill and punched out. Boom! The terrifying fist force blasted out, causing an ear-piercing explosion that shook the void. Silver Flying Zhang's expression changed drastically. He felt a terrifying force rushing towards him with unstoppable force. His body shook violently as he was sent flying backwards. Bam! Silver Flying Zhang's body crashed into the ice wall. The sound of bones breaking resounded as he spat out a mouthful of blood. Hiss hiss hiss, gasps could be heard at the scene. Many people were dumbfounded as they looked at Lu Ming. Lu Ming had injured Silver Flying Zhang with a single punch. Silver Flying Zhang's combat strength was obvious to all. He had cultivated a domain martial technique and was far stronger than his peers. But now, he couldn't even withstand a single blow from Lu Ming. The contrast was too great. It turned out that there was such a powerful person among them. Qiu Yingying and Qiu Hao were also dumbfounded. No wonder he has awakened the 9 dragons' bloodline. Qiu Yingying's beautiful eyes flashed. Ah, brat, I'm going to kill you. Silver Flying Zhang roared as he struggled to get up. Whoosh! But a figure flashed and Lu Ming appeared in front of Silver Flying Zhang. He grabbed Silver Flying Zhang's throat and slammed him heavily against the ice wall. Boom! The ice wall let out a violent explosion. Silver Flying Zhang was like a toad that was hit by a brick. He let out a strange cry as blood flowed out of his mouth and nose. What are you screaming for? Do you really think you're strong? You keep calling others trash and ants. In my eyes, you're the ant. Lu Ming said indifferently. The silver flying octopus struggled desperately in Lu Ming's hands. However, it was as helpless as a weak chick. Do you think you're superior? You're just a native of Yuanlu and have cultivated a domain martial technique. Apart from domain martial technique, who here is weaker than you? Lu Ming continued. This made many people clench their fists. Their confidence, which had been shaken, was restored. Yes, Silver Flying Zhang had only cultivated a domain martial technique. His talent might not be better than theirs. In the future, if they also cultivated a domain martial technique, how could they be weaker than Silver Flying Zhang? They just had the upper hand for now. These people were originally the top geniuses of their respective continents. They had strong minds and quickly regained their confidence. Let him go. At this moment, a cold voice sounded behind Lu Ming. It was Yin Feng. At this moment, a layer of silver light appeared on Yin Feng's body. Even his eyes were shining with silver light. A bone-piercing killing intent was emitted from his body. Lu Ming held Silver Flying Zhang's neck and turned to look at Yin Feng with a faint smile. You have guts and your combat strength is not bad. However, you dare to be so arrogant when you come to Dragon God Valley. The consequences will be tragic. Yin Feng said coldly. He looked at Lu Ming as if he was looking at a dead man. Arrogant? Hehe, according to what you mean, I can't even resist when you bully me. Once I resist, it's called arrogance. Is this the logic of a pig? Lu Ming sneered. Yin Feng's face became even colder. His killing intent was bone-piercing. From the moment you said those words, you're dead. No one can save you. Oh? Is that so? Since I started cultivating, I don't know how many people have said those words to me. However, in the end, they all became dead fish. I hope you won't be the next one. Lu Ming sneered. Don't compare me with those ants you met. Yin Feng said. Hehe, in my eyes, you're not even comparable to an ant. Also, there's no need to keep this blood oath contract. Lu Ming threw Silver Flying Zhang far away and took the blood oath contract in his hand. You dare? Yin Feng shouted. I'm so scared. Chapter 1406. You're courting death. Yin Feng roared. His entire body seemed to have turned into a ball of silver light as he charged towards Lu Ming. Boom! He threw out a punch, and a silver fist force blasted towards Lu Ming's head. Lu Ming, watch out! Qiu Yingying called out worriedly from behind. Lu Ming smiled and threw out a punch. Bang! The two fists collided, and it was like a thunderclap. The entire valley resounded with a violent roar. A figure retreated continuously. Every step he took on the ground would create a huge pit. It was Yin Feng. The person who retreated was Yin Feng. Kill! Yin Feng was pushed back by a single move. He roared into the sky, and his body was covered with silver light as if he had turned into a silver person. The power of his domain and spiritual body were pushed to the extreme. He put on the pair of Emperor spiritual weapon gloves again and threw a punch at Lu Ming. So strong! The power of this punch made the others turn pale with fright. They were greatly shaken. Yin Feng was too strong. They felt that if they were in Yin Feng's place, not even their bones would be left behind when facing this punch. He's really strong. This was Lu Ming's thought. Lu Ming felt that Yin Feng was stronger than Di Xian, whom he had met previously. But what did Lu Ming have to fear? The embryonic form of the chaotic domain covered his fist. He threw out a punch, and the faint shadow of the prison-suppressing steel flashed on his fist. Boom! The two fists collided for the second time. The place where the two stood exploded with a dazzling light. Everyone's eyes widened as they stared at the two. Who would win in the end? Bang! The light exploded, and a figure was sent flying far away, crashing into the ice wall of the valley. It's Yin Feng. It's him. He lost. There was an uproar at the scene. How is this possible? How is this possible? On the side, the other young man who came with Yin Feng and Yin Fei Zhang all widened their eyes in disbelief. They felt that they were dreaming and could not believe it. Yin Feng was a famous sky pride of the Divine Dragon Valley. He was born with a spiritual body and his combat power was unparalleled. There were not many who could match him at the same level. But now, they were being defeated by people from a mere uncivilized island. Furthermore, it was a crushing defeat. How could someone from a savage island be so strong? Kill! I'm going to rip you apart. Yin Feng went completely crazy. A silver dragon appeared above his head. Yin Feng used bloodline fusion and turned into a silver dragon, crazily pouncing towards Lu Ming. Is going crazy useful? Lu Ming sneered. He soared into the sky and punched out continuously. Boom! Boom! The embryonic form of the primal chaos domain weighed hundreds of millions of kilograms as it slammed into the silver true dragon. The silver dragon roared and coiled in the sky. However, after a few moves, the silver dragon's body began to tremble. Cracks began to appear on its body, and it suddenly exploded. Within the silver light, Yin Feng's body appeared. 9 dragons stomping the heavens. Lu Ming looked down from above and took 9 steps in a row. All 9 steps landed on Yin Feng's face, leaving 9 shoe prints. Yin Feng's body fell heavily on the ground and he spat out a mouthful of blood. You, who are high and mighty, have your face stepped on by the ant that you speak of. I wonder how you feel. Lu Ming said coldly. Hearing this, Yin Feng's chest tightened and he spat out another mouthful of blood. His aura was extremely weak. Anger. Yin Feng's entire being seemed to be burning with anger. He was filled with crazy killing intent. He had actually been stepped on by an ant. If this matter were to spread out, he would definitely become the laughingstock of the Dragon God Valley, and be ridiculed by his competitors. All of this was because of Lu Ming. He could not wait to tear Lu Ming into pieces. Now, get out of my sight. Lu Ming said coldly. If this wasn't the Divine Dragon Valley, he would not have let Yin Feng leave. He would have killed all of them. However, this was the Divine Dragon Valley and Lu Ming had just arrived. Moreover, Yin Feng's background was definitely not simple. If Lu Ming killed Yin Feng in front of everyone, he would definitely face revenge and be in danger. Therefore, Lu Ming let Yin Feng leave. Bastard, just you wait, just you wait. Yin Feng left behind some harsh words and retreated with Yin Feizhang and the others in a sorry state. Lu Ming, I'm afraid that Yin Feng will take revenge on you for offending him like this. Qiu Yingying walked over and said worriedly. Don't worry, I didn't kill Yin Feng. I only injured him. It's a competition between peers. Those seniors will not lower themselves to take action. If they want to take revenge, it will only be between peers. As long as I'm careful, it should be fine. Lu Ming smiled faintly. Ha, it's finally fine. The blood oath has been torn apart. Not far away, laughter could be heard. Those who had signed the blood oath were ecstatic. Because the blood oath had been torn apart by Lu Ming, the blood oath was naturally useless. However, when they looked at Lu Ming, fear flashed in their eyes. No one came over to thank him. They thought of Yin Feng. Lu Ming had offended Yin Feng and Yin Feng would definitely take revenge. If they were too close to Lu Ming, they might be implicated. Their eyes flickered and they chose to stay away from Lu Ming and returned to their cave dwellings. These people are really ungrateful, Qiu Yingying said hatefully. Lu Ming smiled and did not mind. This was human nature. Just now, Lu Ming had helped them and prevented them from being enslaved by Yin Feng. Perhaps, he might even save their lives in the Great Emperor's secret realm. However, these people ignored all of this. Compared to the possibility of Yin Feng's revenge, they ignored Lu Ming's kindness and chose to stay away from Lu Ming. Sometimes, humans were just that realistic. Brother, Thank you for your help. At this moment, the triplet brothers walked over. One of them thanked Lu Ming. The other two cupped their fists. You're welcome. How should I address the three of you? Lu Ming smiled. The triplet brothers' unyielding character made Lu Ming admire them. I'm the eldest brother, Yuan Tian. He's the second brother, Yuan Di, and the younger brother, Yuan Ren. The two of them can't speak. Yuan Tian introduced. Can't speak? Lu Ming, Qiu Yingying, and Qiu Hao were stunned. It was rare for martial arts experts to not know how to speak. This was because martial arts experts had strong physical bodies and incredible control over their bodies. The chronic ailments of mortals were no problem for martial arts experts. Therefore, being mute was unbelievable for martial arts experts. The few of them chatted for a while before returning to their cave dwellings. The Yuan brothers needed to go back and treat their injuries. As for Lu Ming, he returned to his cave dwelling and continued to cultivate. Now, the embryonic form of the chaotic domain was getting closer and closer to its limit. Lu Ming believed that he would be able to cultivate it to its limit before entering the Great Emperor's secret realm. Chapter 1407. In the vast snow mountain, Long Yuanshan was standing respectfully in front of an old man in a cave. Yuanshan, did you really meet a genius in the Divine Ruins Continent group who obtained the primordial chaos token? The old man asked. Yes, Master. I wanted to report to you as soon as I came back, but Master has been in seclusion, so I waited until now to report to you. Long Yuanshan said respectfully. Well, to be able to obtain the primordial chaos token in such a remote place, it's really not bad. My Divine Dragon Valley only has one primordial chaos token. The old man smiled gently. Not only that, Master, that little guy awakened the bloodline of the 9 dragons. Long Yuanshan said. Oh? The old man raised his eyebrows and was a little surprised. Master, that little guy is called Lu Ming. I have also inquired about him in the Divine Ruins Continent group. He is a righteous person and has a good character. Does Master want to accept him as a disciple? Long Yuanshan said. There's no hurry. Apprenticeship still depends on fate. It can't be forced. Everything depends on fate. The old man smiled. Yes, Master. Long Yuanshan bowed. Well, Yuanshan, you didn't tell anyone about Lu Ming obtaining the primordial chaos token, right? The old man asked. No, only Master knows about it in the Divine Dragon Valley. Long Yuanshan said. Well, then don't spread it out. His cultivation is still low. If it is spread out, he will be in trouble. The old man instructed. Long Yuanshan nodded. Long Yuanshan, you also have to cultivate well and try to break through to the Saint Realm. If you don't enter the Saint Realm, it will be difficult to reach the top. The old man's tone changed. Thank you for your advice, Master. I will work harder and break through to the Saint Realm. Long Yuanshan nodded. Well, go. The old man waved his hand. The following days were very peaceful. Yin Feng did not come to find trouble. Lu Ming was happy to be idle and cultivate in peace. A few months passed in the blink of an eye. The day of entering the Great Emperor's secret realm had arrived. After a few months of cultivation, Lu Ming's embryonic form of chaos domain had been cultivated to the maximum 2 months ago. Over this period of time, he had been polishing his foundation so that his cultivation could reach a state of perfection. As for the other geniuses, they had made great progress. The cultivation environment here was simply too good. Their cultivation speed was extremely fast, and most of them had already stepped into the realm of utmost exalted. Only a small number of them remained at the perfected spirit god realm. Dong! 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 On this day, the drum was sounded once again. Everyone walked out of the cave. Long Yuanshan was waiting for them. Alright, the Martial Emperor's mystic ground is about to open. Your trial and your opportunity has arrived. Now, follow me. After he finished speaking, Long Yuanchuan stepped into the air and left. Everyone followed. They flew out of the huge valley and arrived at a huge square. There were already many people waiting in the square. There were over 1,000 people gathered together. At a glance, they were all young people. Furthermore, the majority of them were utmost exalted level cultivators. They are the same as you. They are disciples that the Dragon God Valley recruited from various continents. They will also enter the Great Emperor Mystic Realm together. Long Yuanchuan said as he landed on the plaza. So many people? Everyone was shocked. At a glance, there were at least 10,000 people in groups. Moreover, more and more people were arriving. These were the top geniuses of various continents. The Dragon God Valley had recruited so many people. However, when Lu Ming thought of the map of the entire Yuan realm, he was relieved. Outside the Yuan continent, in the vast and boundless ocean, there were too many continents like the divine desolate continent. They were endless. Recruiting tens of thousands of top geniuses was not a problem at all. It was just a drop in the ocean. People continued to fly over. In the end, there were about 20,000 people. Whoosh! 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 Suddenly, a large number of figures flew over from the vast snowy mountains. There were a few thousand of them. They were all young people, and all of them were utmost exalted. However, these people did not land with Lu Ming and the rest. Instead, they landed at the top of the plaza. As soon as they landed, they looked at Lu Ming and the rest with various gazes. Some were curious, some were disdainful, some were arrogant, and some were despising. There were all kinds of gazes. Yin Feng. Lu Ming looked around and saw Yin Feng among the group of people. Lu Ming understood that the thousands of people who came later were the local geniuses of the Dragon God Valley. Yin Feng, I heard that you were defeated by a country bumpkin from a barbaric island a few months ago. You even stepped on his face 9 times. Is that true? A young man in a red robe walked towards Yin Feng and asked with a sneer. Humph, Chi Ku, I don't need you to care about my business. Yin Feng said with a cold face. You don't need me to care? Ha ha ha, Yin Feng, you are really useless. You can't even beat a country bumpkin from a barbaric island, and you were even stepped on 9 times. How embarrassing. It's fine if you are embarrassing yourself, but you even embarrassed the local geniuses of the Dragon God Valley. Why don't I care? Chi Ku, the young man in the red robe, mocked. The others on the side also sneered. Damn it! Yin Feng gritted his teeth and a murderous look appeared on his face. It's all Lu Ming's fault. That country bumpkin. If it weren't for him, he wouldn't have been mocked by Chi Ku. He had been mocked a lot in the past few months. He couldn't wait to tear Lu Ming into pieces. That bastard, I must kill him. Yin Feng roared in his heart. His gaze swept through the crowd and landed on Lu Ming. Lu Ming seemed to have sensed Yin Feng's gaze and looked at him with a disdainful smile. Buzz! At this moment, an old man suddenly appeared in the sky above the square. Lu Ming didn't know how this old man appeared. It was as if he had been standing there before. The old man was burly and had a long beard. He looked very ordinary, like an ordinary person. However, he attracted everyone's attention just by standing there casually. They couldn't look away. It was as if this old man was the entire world. This aura, Lu Ming's pupils shrank rapidly. This old man's aura was very familiar. He thought of the heavenly profound saint. Their auras were very similar. A saint. Lu Ming was certain that this was a martial sage-level powerhouse. This was the first time Lu Ming had seen a living martial saint. Lu Ming couldn't help but release his spiritual consciousness. However, his body trembled in the next moment and he quickly retracted his spiritual consciousness. When he hurriedly scanned with his spiritual sense, he seemed to see a world appear in front of him. A terrifying pressure acted on his heart. If it weren't for the fact that he withdrew his spiritual sense quickly and that the other party didn't have any hostility, his soul would have been injured just now. Too powerful. Is this the existence of the Martial Saint realm? I'm afraid that if he wants to kill me, he can kill me with just a breath. Chapter 1408. Above the Martial Emperor was the Martial Sage. The Martial Sage was also known as the Sage, etc. A sage was unbelievably powerful. With just a thought, they could overturn rivers and seas. Compared to the Martial Emperor, they were much stronger. They were on a completely different level. Furthermore, the Martial Sage realm was different from the other realms. After the Meridian Opening realm, there were a total of 9 realms from the Martial Warrior realm to the Martial Emperor realm. Each realm was divided into 9 levels. However, the Martial Sage realm was completely different. The Martial Sage realm was divided into 3 realms: the Bright Sage realm, the Great Sage realm and the Absolute Sage realm. Each realm was divided into 4 levels: Small Success, Great Success, Peak and Complete realm. The gap between each realm was huge. The 3 realms were collectively known as the Martial Sage realm. Above it was the Martial Emperor realm, also known as the Great Emperor. It was said that the Martial Emperor realm was different from the Martial Sage realm. They wondered which realm the old man in front of them was at. Shush! 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 The moment the old man appeared, Long Yuanchuan and the rest flew up into the sky. There were a total of 20 of them and they greeted the old man. Greetings, Elder Hong. The burly old man nodded his head and waved his hand. Long Yuanchuan and the rest stood behind him respectfully. Following which, Elder Hong's gaze swept across the crowd. Everyone felt a formless pressure pressing down on them. They immediately stood up straight, their expressions solemn. Even the local youths were all incomparably arrogant, but in front of Elder Hong's gaze, they all stood obediently and respectfully. I believe everyone already knows the objective of this trip. Elder Hong spoke. His voice was loud and clear and it rang in everyone's ears. Here, I would like to emphasize a few points. Firstly, we are entering the Great Emperor's secret realm and the Great Emperor is Emperor Tsang. Elder Hong announced once again. Many people were shocked. What? It's Emperor Tsang. I thought it was a secret realm left behind by a great emperor. I never expected it to be Emperor Tsang. At the scene, there was a lot of discussion, and the loudest ones were the local youths. That was because Emperor Tsang was too famous. Regardless of whether it was the Divine Dragon Valley or the Divine Sect, they were all located in Tsang State. As the name suggested, the Tsang State's name came from Emperor Tsang. 60,000 years ago, the Tsang Emperor was the ruler of the Tsang province, the only great emperor of the Tsang province. But 60,000 years ago, Emperor Tsang suddenly disappeared without a trace. It was said that Emperor Tsang had already fallen. As for how he died, no one knew. With the disappearance of the Tsang Emperor, there was no longer a great emperor in the Tsang state. And this time, the great emperor mystic realm was actually Emperor Tsang's. This was beyond everyone's expectations. This time, entering the Tsang Emperor's secret territory is not only a test, but also an opportunity for you. When you come out of the secret territory, you will become an official disciple of the Dragon God Valley. Also, the treasures you obtained in the secret territory, you can use them yourself. If you need them, you can keep them. The sect will not force you to hand them over. If you don't think it's useful, or if you have some high-level treasures or secret techniques, you can hand them over to the sect. The sect will compensate you with origin stones or treasures of equivalent value. Elder Hong's words caused the hearts of the crowd to turn fiery. The Dragon God Valley will not force you to hand over the treasures in the Great Emperor's secret territory. If you're willing to hand them over, then hand them over. The sect will also compensate you accordingly. This condition was too generous. It was shocking. What you get is yours. Lu Ming was secretly impressed. This was also a strategy of the Dragon God Valley. In this way, everyone would do their best to search for treasures because what you get is yours. If the Dragon God Valley gave the order to hand over all the treasures they obtained, who would risk their lives to search for treasures? At most, they would find a place to hide and pass the test when they come out. Anyway, these youths would become disciples of the Dragon God Valley in the future. The more treasures they obtained, the more benefits they would gain in the future. The second point. Elder Hong's voice sounded again. The crowd quietened down. The second point, this time, the 13 top sects in the Tsang province will send a large number of disciples in. The competition will definitely be intense. Therefore, the disciples of the Dragon God Valley must be united against the outsiders. Do you understand? Yes, Elder. Everyone replied loudly. All right, then follow me and depart. Elder Hong waved his hand and a battleship appeared in the sky. The moment it appeared, it expanded rapidly and became 100 miles long. Everyone flew onto the battleship. Although there were more than 20,000 people, it was still very spacious on a 100 miles long battleship. Let's go! Elder Hong shouted. The battleship broke through the sky and disappeared into the horizon. In the Yuan continent, due to the stability of the space, it was much more difficult to teleport. It wasn't that there weren't any teleportation arrays, but the price to pay was very high. Therefore, most people would use some external objects to travel, such as various large and small battleships and puppets. Elder Hong's battleship belonged to the large battleship category. The battleship broke through the sky at an astonishing speed. Moreover, as long as the origin stone was activated, it could continue flying without rest. A few days later, the battleship stopped above a desolate mountain range. Everyone came out of the battleship and stood in the sky. Elder Hong waved his hand and kept the battleship. Everyone looked around and realized that there were other people besides the Dragon God Valley. People from other sects had already arrived. It's the Heavenly Divinity sect. And the Nine Heaven Sword sect. And the Heavenly King Palace. The local youths could tell at a glance which faction those people belonged to. Out of the 13 top sects in the Tsang province, 5 or 6 had already arrived. The Heavenly God sect. Lu Ming looked to the east. The Heavenly God sect was in the east. There were tens of thousands of people there, twice the number of people compared to the Dragon God Valley. The Dragon God Valley had a higher requirement for bloodlines. They needed to awaken the bloodline of a true dragon or a scaled dragon. However, the Heavenly God sect cultivated a lot of different bloodlines. Fortunately, Lu Ming's eyesight was good. He saw a few familiar faces among the tens of thousands of people in the Heavenly God sect. Eden, Ziwuji, Bing Kong, Ji Hongchen. However, he didn't see Xian Yinjuan. Lu Ming looked at the Heavenly God sect. Many people from the Heavenly God sect also looked at them. This time, Saintess Ninjuan told us that there are enemies in the Dragon God Valley and the Sky Universe Demon sect. She asked us to help her take care of them. In the Heavenly God sect, a young man with a flame mark between his eyebrows said, "Of course. Since the Saintess said so, we will take care of those ants." Another young man sneered. When the Saintess was mentioned, their eyes were filled with admiration and respect. The Saintess of the Heavenly God sect, Xian Yinjuan, was definitely a legendary figure. Chapter 1409. Later on, Xian Yinjuan was conferred the title of Holy Maiden by the Heavenly God sect. As she had broken through to the martial royal realm, she could not enter the Great Emperor Mystic realm. Hence, she asked a few geniuses of the Heavenly God sect to enter the Great Emperor Mystic realm and help her get rid of a few strong enemies. How could they refuse to serve the Holy Maiden? Bing Kong, Yi Jian, Ziwu Ji, you came from the same continent as the Holy Maiden. Who is the one that the Holy Maiden asked us to kill? The young man with the flame mark on his forehead looked at Bing Kong, Yi Jian, Ziwu Ji and Ji Hongchen. The 4 of their faces changed slightly. Yi Jian was silent. So was Ji Hongchen. Senior brother Lu, it's that one. Bing Kong spoke and pointed at Lu Ming's position. Oh, it's that kid. The young man with the flame mark on his forehead and a few other young men looked at Lu Ming. Ji Hongchen's face was filled with worry. This kid is mine. The young man with the flame mark on his forehead said casually. Lu Yan, that might not be the case. It's not that easy to win the saint's favor by yourself. That little brat can be killed with a wave of your hand. That will depend on our luck. Whoever meets him after entering the great emperor's mystic realm will be considered lucky. Another young man sneered. Let's see who's lucky. The young man with the flame mark on his forehead snorted. Lu Ming, who was in the Dragon God Valley, naturally saw Bing Kong pointing at him. However, Lu Ming did not care. It was fine if these people did not provoke him. If they wanted to die, he did not mind sending them on their way. Shush! In the distance, more large sects arrived. As time passed, more and more powerful forces and sects arrived. The number of people at the scene increased. After a few hours, a total of 13 sects and forces arrived. These 13 sects and forces were the 13 strongest forces in the Tsang state. Each force had more than 20,000 people. In total, there were more than 300,000 people. In other words, this time, there would be more than 300,000 people entering the Great Emperor Mystic Realm. That was a huge number. These people were top geniuses from various continents. Every major force was led by a Saint Realm expert. The 13 Saint Realm experts stood quietly in the air, not saying a word as they waited quietly. Soon, night fell and a moon appeared in the sky. Blood moon. This moon was actually blood red. A ray of blood-red moonlight shone from the blood moon. Wang! At this moment, ripples appeared in the sky. Layers of wave-like ripples appeared. At this moment, the eyes of the 13 Saint Realm powerhouses suddenly lit up, and a shocking aura burst forth from their bodies. Whoosh! 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 The 13 saints stepped forward and appeared in the space where the ripples had appeared. Attention, we are now opening the entrance to the Great Emperor Mystic Realm. A Saint Realm expert spoke. The auras of the 13 Saint Realm experts surged, as if 13 different worlds had appeared. At the same time, the 13 people attacked at the same time. 13 different colored lights flew forward and gathered together. Open! At first, it was blurry, but slowly, it became clearer and clearer. That is, Lu Ming's pupils constricted. What appeared in the void was a tomb, a huge tomb. It was extremely huge, even bigger than a mountain range. It was at least 100,000 feet tall. Countless people were surprised. Was this the Great Emperor Mystic Realm? Or was this the tomb of a great emperor? Was the Great Emperor Mystic Realm the tomb of a great emperor? Rumble. With a final rumble, the huge tomb appeared in the sky, as tall as the sky. Lu Ming had never seen such a majestic tomb before. Rumble. When the great necropolis appeared, the enormous tombstone in front of it began to move. Some of the more cowardly people sucked in a breath of cold air and involuntarily took a few steps back. The tombstone moved, and finally opened completely, revealing a pitch-black space inside. It was extremely terrifying. This can't be the entrance to the Great Emperor Mystic Realm, right? Someone spoke, his voice trembling. If it was an ordinary tomb, no one would be afraid. However, this involved a great emperor, and it was a little terrifying. That's right, this is the entrance. Hurry up and enter. If you are late, the tombstone will close. A Sage Realm expert said. Really? Some people's hearts skipped a beat. Ha ha ha, isn't it just a tomb? What a coward. Someone laughed loudly and took the lead to fly over. Whoosh! Whoosh! Then, more and more people flew in. Let's go. More than 20,000 people from the Divine Dragon Valley also flew towards the entrance of the tomb. Lu Ming followed the crowd and flew in. The entrance of the tomb was huge, and it could accommodate many people at the same time. Soon, everyone flew into the tomb. Rumble. When everyone flew into the tombstone rumbled and closed automatically. It was pitch black inside the tomb, and they couldn't even see their own fingers. Even if everyone's cultivation was high, they could still see in the dark. However, they couldn't see anything here. In the next moment, someone condensed a flame, and there was a trace of dim light in the tomb. A ball of flame also appeared in Lu Ming's hand, and he could barely see a few dozen meters around him. "Brother Lu." Qiu Yingying's voice was heard as she walked towards Lu Ming. Qiu Hao was beside Qiu Yingying. "Lady Qiu, Brother Qiu." Lu Ming greeted the two of them. "Heavenly King Palace, gather here. Heavenly God Sect, gather here. Divine Dragon Valley, gather here." Voices could be heard in the darkness, as the disciples of the 13 factions began to gather. In such an environment, they would only feel safe if they gathered together. Lu Ming and the other two also gathered in the direction of Divine Dragon Valley. "There seems to be a lot of forks." Qiu Yingying looked around. At this moment, many people had condensed flames, holy light and the like. Countless lights lit up the space like stars in the night sky. They found themselves in a huge stone chamber. This stone chamber was extremely huge, and it could easily accommodate hundreds of thousands of people. There were many large passages around the stone chamber. There were no signs at the entrance of the passages, and no one knew where these passages led to. "Heavenly King Palace disciples, let's go this way. Heavenly God Sect disciples, this way." In the end, the 13 forces each chose a passage. Those from the Divine Dragon Valley chose a passage on the left and walked forward carefully. The passage was huge, and it wasn't crowded at all with tens of thousands of people walking together.